The Black Death, which ravaged Europe from 1347 to 1351, stands as one of the most catastrophic pandemics in human history. Originating from Asia, the plague swept across continents, killing an estimated 25 to 30 million people in Europe alone, about 1/3 of the population. The Black Death's entry into Europe was facilitated by burgeoning trade routes that linked the continent with Asia. Merchant ships, infested with rats carrying plague-infected fleas, docked at ports across the Mediterranean. The disease manifested primarily in three forms: bubonic, characterized by swollen lymph nodes or buboes; pneumonic, which infected the lungs and could be spread through coughing; and septicemic, which infected the blood and was almost always fatal. The rapid spread of the plague was accelerated by the movement of people and goods. As the disease moved inland, it obliterated entire towns and cities, leaving a trail of death and despair. The overwhelming mortality rates crippled communities, leading to a collapse in social structures and services. The societal impact of the Black Death was profound and pervasive. Urban areas, with their dense populations and poor sanitation, were particularly vulnerable. Death became an omnipresent force, with families witnessing the loss of multiple members within days. The fear of contagion led to the abandonment of the sick and dying, fracturing familial and communal bonds. Public institutions, including courts and local governments, struggled to function amid the chaos. The dead were often left unburied or hastily thrown into mass graves, as the traditional rites and rituals of burial were overwhelmed by the sheer number of corpses. This breakdown in social order extended to the enforcement of laws and the collection of taxes, further destabilizing communities. The plague did not discriminate, affecting people of all social classes, though the poor suffered the most due to their living conditions. The nobility and clergy, though not immune, had better means to isolate themselves and access to slightly better medical care. The economic ramifications of the Black Death were equally devastating. The drastic reduction in population led to a severe labor shortage, which disrupted agricultural production and other forms of labor. Fields went unplowed, harvests rotted, and livestock were left untended. This agricultural collapse resulted in widespread food shortages and famines, compounding the misery of the surviving population. However, the labor shortage also had a transformative effect. With fewer workers available, those who survived found their labor in high demand. This shift allowed them to negotiate better wages and working conditions, gradually leading to the erosion of the feudal system. Landowners, desperate for workers, had to offer more favorable terms to peasants and serfs, contributing to the decline of serfdom. The decrease in population also led to a surplus of goods, causing prices to fall and markets to stagnate. Many businesses collapsed, unable to adapt to the sudden economic shift. Yet, in the long term, the economic upheaval paved the way for a more dynamic and flexible labor market, setting the stage for the economic transformations of the Renaissance. Religion was central to life in the 14th century, and the Black Death had a profound impact on religious beliefs and practices. The plague was often interpreted as divine punishment for humanity's sins, leading to a surge in piety and religious fervor. Many people sought solace in the church, hoping for protection and explanations for the calamity. However, the church's inability to stop the plague or provide satisfactory answers led to disillusionment and a decline in its authority. The death toll among the clergy was significant, with many priests, monks, and nuns succumbing to the disease while tending to the sick. This loss further weakened the church's influence and disrupted its operations. In some regions, flagellant movements emerged where groups of people would travel from town to town, publicly whipping themselves in penance, hoping to appease an angry god. These movements often fueled social unrest and violence, including anti-Semitic pogroms. Jews were scapegoated and accused of poisoning wells, leading to massacres and expulsions. The psychological impact of the Black Death was immense. The constant presence of death created a pervasive sense of fear and helplessness. Artistic and literary expressions from this period, such as the macabre dance of death, reflect the collective obsession with mortality. The trauma of the plague era also fostered a surge in superstition and a decline in rational thinking, as people grasped for any means to understand or control the disease. The Black Death left an indelible mark on the cultural and artistic landscape of Europe. The omnipresence of death and suffering profoundly influenced the themes and styles of the period's art and literature. Writers and artists grappled with the existential questions posed by the plague, often reflecting on the fragility and transience of life. Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron, written during the plague years, offers a vivid depiction of life in Florence amidst the epidemic. The frame narrative, in which 10 young people retreat to the countryside to escape the plague and pass the time by telling stories, captures the desperation and desire for escapism that many felt. In visual arts, the motif of the Dance of Death became prevalent, symbolizing the universality and inevitability of death. Artists depicted scenes of skeletons leading the living to their graves, a stark reminder of the plague's reach. These works emphasized the futility of earthly riches and power in the face of death, urging viewers to consider the spiritual and moral dimensions of their lives. Music also reflected the somber mood of the times. Funeral dirges and other solemn compositions became more common, mirroring the collective grief and mourning. The cultural shift towards more introspective and somber themes marked a significant departure from the more vibrant and optimistic expressions of earlier medieval art. The Black Death exposed the limitations and deficiencies of medieval medical knowledge and public health practices. Medical theories of the time were largely based on the teachings of ancient Greek and Roman physicians, such as Galen and Hippocrates, who believed in the balancing of the body's humors. Treatments often involved bloodletting, purging, and the use of herbal remedies, none of which were effective against the plague. Faced with the epidemic, medical practitioners were forced to confront the inadequacies of their methods. Some attempted to find new approaches, though these were often based on superstition rather than scientific understanding. Quarantine measures, such as isolating ships and travelers suspected of carrying the disease, were implemented with varying degrees of success. These early forms of quarantine represented a rudimentary understanding of contagion and marked a significant step towards modern public health practices. The high mortality among physicians and other caregivers highlighted the need for better protection and protocols in dealing with infectious diseases. The plague's devastation ultimately spurred advancements in medical knowledge and the development of more systematic approaches to disease prevention and control. The long-term effects of the Black Death were profound and far-reaching. The dramatic population decline led to significant social, economic, and cultural transformations. The labor shortages and increased bargaining power of workers contributed to the decline of feudalism and the rise of a more mobile and empowered workforce. The disillusionment with the church and the search for new explanations for the plague's devastation helped pave the way for the Renaissance, a period of renewed interest in science, art, and humanism. The trauma of the Black Death also influenced European attitudes towards death and the afterlife, fostering a more introspective and questioning spirit. In terms of public health, the experience of the plague prompted more systematic approaches to managing disease outbreaks. Quarantine measures, improved sanitation practices, and the establishment of early public health institutions were direct responses to the challenges posed by the Black Death. These developments laid the groundwork for modern epidemiology and public health systems. The Black Death was a cataclysmic event that reshaped medieval Europe in myriad ways. The immediate impact was devastating, with immense loss of life and societal upheaval. However, the plague also catalyzed significant social, economic, and cultural transformations. The aftermath saw the erosion of feudalism, the rise of a more empowered labor force, and shifts in artistic and intellectual expressions that would eventually lead to the Renaissance. Life during the Black Death was characterized by fear, suffering, and profound change. The resilience of those who survived, and the long-term adaptations they made in response to the crisis, are a testament to human endurance in the face of overwhelming adversity. The Black Death's legacy is a complex tapestry of destruction and renewal, reflecting the capacity of societies to rebuild and transform in the wake of disaster.